What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Beyond the Coach podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kelsey Nanini.
And I'm Chris Sweet.
And I'm going to just dive right into it today.
Dive in.
Dive on. I'm a dive in. Yesterday on our cohort, one of our cohort Zoom calls, we had a programming topic for periodization, and one of the gals. Ew, what am I, like 60
One of
years
the
old?
gals on
One of
our
those
team.
gals.
One of those girly pops.
Ew, I just gave myself the ick. One of the girls, one of the coaches.
I feel like you aged yourself there. Like, I don't know why. I feel like
Oh my
gals.
God, I am 30. Ew.
Ooh.
One of the coaches.
Dive in. Don't worry.
Don't worry, we're diving in. Oh, we're gonna run it back. One of the coaches in the cohort, she asked a really good question, and it kind of piqued we were like, oh wow, that would actually be really good to podcast about, and kind of elaborate on more. So she was talking about a client that she had in the past who wanted to run marathons, and she kind of did it more, it sounded like it was more recreational, but today we're going to talk about it more so in the sense of like, you're kind of competing in one. And I know a lot of people just do like half marathons to say they did it, to do it. And same thing with like high rocks and that kind of stuff. But regardless for the reason you're doing an organized competition, whether it's for fun or to win, why, like, how do you do a program around that, right? And so she was saying that her client was doing programs that she found on Strava for running. And I know now, with ChatGPT, aggressively increasing in popularity, people are starting to do programs there. They're starting to buy programs elsewhere. And we want to talk about just kind of the pros and cons around buying or following a program. Pinterest is still out there, which is crazy. People are still using Pinterest. TikTok is out there. There's so many different things where you can get a templated program. You can either purchase it or download it for free, and utilize that to train for said event. And we want to do kind of just a pros and cons around that route and around having actually a one-on-one coach prepare you for these types of situations and things that you're working towards. So that's what we want to dive into today. And I'm excited for it. We kind of did something like this at the end of July. It was like about cookie cutter programs, but this is specifically pertaining to like an event that you're working towards. So I guess we can start off with pros. Let's play devil's advocate. Let's talk about the pros of following these programs. So fun. I guess the first is cost efficiency. It's a lot more affordable to find a program on Strava or on YouTube, ChatGPT, because some of them you don't have to pay for. And some of them are actually just really inexpensive, even like $100 for a program. So I would say that's definitely the first, probably the biggest pro.
I was going to say, like, I think the biggest pro is really just cost at the end of the day. I think another pro to it is just like convenience of accessibility to it as well, especially if you're doing something for the first time. Like if you're running a marathon for the first time or doing a high rocks for the first time, they're obviously like a high level event, but the convenience of just having a templated program that gives you a baseline idea of what you need to be doing for something that you really don't know what it looks like or what the expectation of it looks like. These templated things, most of the ones that I've seen, are not made by like people who don't know what they're talking about. Like there's definitely great resources out there for templated programming for training for a specific competition. That again will give you an idea of like mileage, like how much are you like going up and down and tapering and deload weeks. Like there are so many different things that go into it, that it gives people knowledge for the first time over something that's really novice and new to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll use myself for an example. I used ChatGPT as like a resource for my half marathon training. Like I've helped clients train for half marathons before, but I actually wanted to use it as a test for myself to see. So obviously like I can do it And I did most of it, but I actually used it as a resource just to like kind of double check my work. At the time, I still had a coach, but it wasn't a coach who was necessarily like coaching people in half marathons. It was actually a powerlifting coach, believe it or not.
The total opposite.
Yeah, the total opposite. But it was nice to at least like use it as a resource and just like see like make I guess check my work. But again, it's a computer. So that's where I kind of came in and in my coaching and used some extra things for it. But I think it's good in that sense. And like you said, for someone doing something for the first time, maybe you don't want to spend the money or the time to have a specific program built for you and you because you don't know if you're going to even like what it is you're doing. So it's like, hey, let's just get one of these more readily available programs. That's the other thing is it's readily available. Whereas if you're going the one-on-one coaching route, it's going to take time for a coach to put together a program. Like I would say from the time you decide to work together, 1 to 2 weeks before you're going to get your actual program, because it should be more built for you in that case. Whereas a template program that you just purchase, it's kind of just ready. It's just there for you. And if you know how to train on the opposite side of that, if you're a novice or like you're more intermediate to advanced and you know what you're doing, not novice, but intermediate to advanced, and you kind of know what you're doing, you know how to push yourself, you know the proper intensities. Sometimes those template programs aren't a bad thing either because you know what to do. But to that same point, sometimes you actually need more specifics as you get more advanced too. So there's kind of two sides of the coin in that sense.
Yeah, I think people just really need to evaluate like what is their goal with doing said thing. Like if you want to go run a 10K for the first time, you're like, I just signed up for a 10K or a turkey trot with my family, and you're like, I just need that baseline. There's apps out there. There is plenty of programs that will help you with mileage and help you get up. If I'm being completely honest, outside of the pros that we've already said, I think that that's pretty straightforward of the pros. Like
That's pretty much it.
They're not bad though. Like they're great pros. They're great pros for accessibility. What I love about templated programs is that the barrier to entry for someone to work on a goal is like literally lowered completely. And at the end of the day, I want all of the world to move their body. And if that's what people need in order to work, especially towards a very specific performance goal, and to have that lower barrier to entry is great. I love that there is accessibility out there for people that may not have the resources to invest in a coach and to do the other side of the coin that we'll obviously talk about as well. Are there any other pros you want to elaborate on there?
No, I was going to say, I think so often we demonize templated programs, group fitness. And I think that's what Chris and I are here to like show is like, they're not necessarily bad. There's a time and place for them. And like, that's what I'm like, I was a group fitness girly, for a little bit of time. Actually, it was mostly because I was trying to save money to buy a house. So I just worked out at the Orange area that I worked out all day. But I had a lot of fun. And I think for some people, like this isn't a group fitness topic, but you know, for some people, that's just what they need. And it's, like you said, readily available. I also just think it's like some people just want that. They want to turn their brain off, and not having to check in with a coach and having just a templated program or group fitness is like a great option for them. But on the other side of the coin, cons to these programs. So biggest one, and not something that people oftentimes really consider, because I don't think it's something that anyone would think about if they weren't actually like a professional in the space. These programs are not meeting you where you're at. So if you are currently aren't running at all, and all of a sudden you start a program that has you running 10 miles a week, well, now you just aggressively increased your distance. And that's not always the case, right? But sometimes it is if you're doing like a half marathon plan, or maybe it's even 8 miles a week. That's still a huge jump. I would say anything more than an extra 5 miles a week is probably going to feel like a lot. And even then, that's a lot. Like when I started training for my half, I had been already running 5 to 6 miles a week. Whereas then I started and I had a good baseline. So that's one thing these programs don't consider is like, where are you at right now? And that goes for any type of program. If it's a high rocks program, well, if you've never done sled push or pull, you've never done a wall ball, walking lunges are unheard of. You only do split squats. Like there's so many things to consider if you just throw yourself into a program, especially with high rocks if you haven't been running. I think honestly running is the hardest part of high rocks, but that's coming from someone who's been doing the functional kind of training that high rocks involves for a while. Running was still the hardest part because you're doing an exercise, then you're running. And so if you aren't properly prepared for that and you toss yourself into a program, you're going to be hurting.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the topic of hurting, programs don't take into account injury and any deficits that you may have in your training, or incapabilities that you may have in your training as well. So I love to see people who just really like push forward through adversity that they've had to experience from a physical standpoint of like injuries and things that have come up for them, and they work through it. But a lot of the templated programs aren't programmed around that. So again, going back to your point, like your starting point, sure, starting point can be if you're only running 3 miles right now and a program goes and tells you to run 7, not everyone's going to be smart enough to think, maybe I shouldn't just jump from like 3 to 7, like aggressively. The other point is, hey, this program doesn't know where I'm at. And so if I'm running these 7 miles, but my knee's starting to ache really bad, or my hips are starting to really hurt myself during this, then having a coach and a more individualized program for yourself is going to take all of those things into account. Going back to like how quickly you get the program accessible to you, a coach is going to sit down and take a lot of those things into consideration, which is why it isn't just something where you hire a coach and the next day you have your program created for you. You hire a coach and the coach needs to take a step back to assess all things behind the scenes, medical history, injury history, and create a plan that's best for you and incorporates both the cardio training you need, but then also the strength and rehabilitation assistance that you need to do whatever it is that you're doing and whatever performance goal that is.
Yeah, and to that point as well, especially if you're combining like running and lifting, is a running program doesn't take into account the lifting that you're doing or the extra movement that you're doing throughout the week. I think of a client that I have, he's doing a triathlon in a month now. It's on October 4th. And he ended up getting hurting his pec. It was a couple months ago. And he was still lifting 3 times a week in conjunction with the biking, swimming, and running we were doing. And a program isn't going to adjust to that on top of adjusting your lifting with your running and all your other activity, where we just had to pull back. We changed a little bit of like the swimming too, where he was swimming with a board, and working on more of like his leg kicks versus doing the full range of motion with his arm. And we just had to tweak some of those things, tweak the type of lifts that he was doing, and programs that are set for lifting aren't going to be designed for that. Like it was more comfortable for him to do an incline bench or like a dumbbell bench than it was to do normal bench, where we still wanted to keep the movement in and build his chest, but we just had to be smart about it. And I think for a normal person that's just following a templated program, you get an injury and you're like, well, I'm just not going to do that movement at all. Where on a one-on-one coaching side, it's like, hey, we know from our standpoint, it's like completely taking the movement pattern out isn't necessarily going to help the problem. It's putting a Band-Aid on the problem, but it's not going to fully solve it. And that's where a coach can come in and be like, hey, let's reduce the range of motion. Let's lower the load. Let's change the variation of this movement versus taking a complete movement pattern out and just hoping for the best.
Yeah. And then adding to that as well, with a templated program or whatever you buy off the internet, nutrition matters so much when you are training for a marathon or a high rocks or even a powerlifting meet, whatever it may be. Everyone prioritizes their training. They're like, here's my training schedule. Here's my time blocks to get in my runs. Here's this and this and this. What are you doing to make sure your body is supported through that will prevent injury or will help manage pain and will keep your body strong enough to be able to follow through on said goal that you have? And a lot of those templated programs aren't telling you how to increase your food and what specifically you need to increase, what even your hydration should be and what your habits should be, and assessing all things for us as coaches, we look under the scope for clients beyond just what injury and what they're telling us as far as like training goes. We're looking at what are their stress levels that week? What was their recoverability that week? What was their hunger doing? And also looking at what were their habits on the weekends versus the weekdays. Are we seeing any skewed data there, any skewed habits that someone is having? Is their sleep not being sufficient enough? Because that's definitely not going to help. Because as someone increases the demand of their training, it's very normal to see biofeedback to start to get affected, especially if they are not prioritizing their nutrition and prioritizing the other habits behind the scenes too. But a novice isn't going to know how to do that. Intermediate, advanced, sure, they probably have some skin in the game there where they understand it. It's still a lot of accountability to take for yourself too. And that goes into my other point, was going to be accountability. You know, you get a templated plan and the plan's like, okay, here's a PDF, have fun. Or like, here's access to an app that, you know, you can track your runs on. Whereas a coach is going to sit down and be like, hey, here's the dates, here's what you need to be doing. And you need to be realistic with that and have someone hold you accountable no matter your experience level.
Yeah. And like with that, having seasons that you're training in. But to the point of the nutrition, going back to that, because I just thought about that on the last thing you said, staying on the nutrition topic, I think it's also important to find the right coach. Because the coach that, and this is different. If you're already working with a coach and then you decide, you're like, oh, I want to do HYROX. Oh, I want to do a half marathon, a marathon. It's like, okay, that's a little different because I get it. Goals change. However, making sure that your coach is set to help you in that goal is really important. I remember one time I saw a coach post that, you know, it was beneficial, but she was getting coached by another coach. She was training for a competition and I believe it was HYROX. She was in a deficit and she was like, my body just isn't responding. I'm super inflamed. And I'm like, well, no kidding. You're super inflamed because you just aggressively increased your training and now you're trying to also be in a deficit. And when you are training, I cannot emphasize this enough. I don't care if you're in a deficit and you decide to do training. I don't care if you haven't been in a deficit, but you want to lose body fat to train, whatever it may be. You cannot, I get so fired up about this, as you can see. Do not be in a deficit. It is the dumbest thing you can do. Because also your deficit outside of training for something is much different from your deficit training for something. Like if you think about how much activity you're actually increasing when you start to train for something, your old maintenance may be that deficit now because your maintenance changes, believe it or not, when your activity changes. Maintenance isn't only determined by your BMR, it's also determined by your NEAT, by your exercise expenditure, by the thermic effect of food. Like there's so many things that go in your maintenance more than just the calculator and what it's telling you. Your body will quite literally, you're running it into the ground by being in a deficit. And there's a time and place for a deficit. I totally agree. Yeah. I also think a horrible mindset to have is I need to lose weight before I do this. Unless it's something you're like physically incapable of doing and you do need to genuinely lose weight, then it's like, cool, let's push that goal out and not do it right this second. And so I think to that other point, that's where a one-on-one coach can come in that's knowledgeable, whether it be nutrition related, lifestyle related. The clients that we had that were going to do HYROX in end of September, beginning of October, at some point in there. But one of my clients, just health related reasons, I was like, hey, it's not smart. Like we don't have enough time to logically have you trained for this. So let's wait. There's a HYROX at the end of January. If you're ready by then, it'll be a really great time to do it then. But there's no point in running your body into the ground right now when it was just run into the ground to push to do this one HYROX. Like there's always going to be HYROX. They're popping up like daisies everywhere. And so I think just being really smart in that decision and knowing that opportunity will always be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to add that too. Like you might not know what's in your best interest. Like that's even as a coach, sometimes like we have egos, we have desires, we have selfish gain that we want to have to say that we did this or did that or look a certain way or cross off a certain bucket list item, whatever it may be. I love having a coach to just say that exact thing. Like, hey, not right now. Like it's not right now that we can focus on this, but in the long run it's saving you so much pain,
Mm.
potentially so much frustration. And a good coach will empathize with you on that, but then also ultimately help guide you to the goal that you still have. Like they're not going to be like, oh, that's not possible. It's, hey, this is possible, but here's what needs to happen in this order of events. And a templated program, again, doesn't know any of that. A templated program is not meant to know your health conditions. If you're dealing with hormone or GI related issues, if you're dealing with an injury, if you're dealing with anything behind the scenes. And again, when life things happen and all of a sudden, like, let's say you fell off your training for 2-3 weeks, you don't know sometimes where to pick back up. Like, you don't know, do I pick up running 15 miles a week? Do I, because that's what I'm supposed to be doing this week, according to the plan, the week 7 of this, I'm supposed to be doing this. Or do you go back to, 2 weeks before or a week before? And a coach is really going to help you with those things and keep you steady in it. But there's just not enough accountability for how big a lot of our egos are. And that goes for me as well. Like, I need a coach for that very reason, just to keep you steady, because you're going to want what you want, but a coach is going to see past like the emotion of it all. I always say coaches are for logic, not for emotion. That's why like we hire one to get that knowledge and to get that gain. Whereas you as the individual and as the athlete, like it's emotion related for you. You want to do this for a certain reason. But staying steady is definitely super important in all of that.
Yeah, for sure. I remember I was joking with you about High Rocks because we were going to do one in September.
Yep.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, like the Phoenix one is at the end of January. Like, how convenient. It's 20 minutes from my house. I could so do it. And then I was like, no, I can't. I was like, at least I have like the logic, but I know some people would be like, oh, like I'll be 8 weeks postpartum by that point, potentially longer, depending on when I actually deliver. I could do that because technically I can go back to exercising at 6 weeks, but it's like, there's so many other things to consider. And so having the right timing is so important. And with a coach as well, to the point the coach last night on our cohort call was talking about how this client, wanted to be running sometimes, upwards of 30, 40 miles a week. But then she also wanted to be lifting like 3 times a week as well and focusing on heavy compounds. And I was like, and she also was mentioning she's not consistent with it either. So then she'll complain that her strength is down, but yet she's, running and not taking any time away from running. And it's not that you have to completely pull back on running, but having seasons. And I always use the example when there's people who just want to do everything. First of all, I applaud them. I'm like, I love that you want to compete. I'm an athlete too. Like, I want to do all the things, right? Like, I wanted anything that I can physically do, I want to do it. There's a time and place. And the example of Patty Mahomes, everyone knows who Patrick Mahomes is, I think. I hope you know who Patrick Mahomes is. If you don't,
Go Google.
He's on the team with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Taylor arena.
Taylor
Swift's friend. He's Taylor Swift's team. Yeah, he's Taylor Swift's quarterback. If you don't know, now you know. But any professional athlete that you look at, they train in seasons. And this is something we really heavily learned in our CSCS when I got my CSCS. You have your in season. That depends. Your in season depends on, it could be a day. Your in season could literally be a day if you're doing High Rocks, and that's it. And maybe you have a couple in seasons, but like for football players, their in season is 4, 5, 6 months ish, depending on how good their team is. For Patty Mahomes, it's typically 5 to 6 months.
On the longer end of
typically
the
longer
time frame.
After in season,
I would like for it to not. If
I would actually agree with that as well. Yes, I think this year it's showing promise.
Yeah.
Then you have postseason. That's where they go to Disneyland. They're like, what are you going to do next? And they're like, we're going to Disneyland. They don't do anything. They take it completely off. They don't do anything sports related. If anything, they're golfing, they're doing pickleball, whatever it is. They're probably not even lifting. Their body needs time off. And then they have their off season, which is where they're heavily training to gain strength for the season. They're not doing a lot of football related things. For you in high rock, if you're doing high rocks, for instance, maybe you're just doing a lot of lifting to gain strength and you're just doing a little bit of running on the side. If you're a marathoner, maybe you're doing some running, but you're more so doing actually some strength training to improve your connective tissue. And then you have preseason, which is really where you're starting to ramp up your training for the specific event that you have. But a lot of people don't realize that those things exist. It's just like, oh, I'm going to just keep training. It's going to be really hard to constantly get better and improve without getting injured if you're constantly pushing for more and not taking steps back. And that's where a templated program will not take that into account. It's like, here's 12 weeks to run a half marathon. Here's a 16-week program to run a marathon. Here's an 8-week program for high rocks. Like, very rarely do you find a year-long program that goes through all the different phases of what you should be training for. And that's where a coach can come in. And if you're listening to this and wanting to train for something, I actually recommend you get with a coach before you want to train for it. So if you're doing a high rocks in October, please don't start with a coach now. Well, I mean, you can, but start with them before you think you need to. If you're thinking about doing a high rocks in January, February, I know the whole year was planned out and it's been posted. If you're doing one next August, start with a coach now because you're going to be able to go through that off season and prep. And I promise you're going to feel so much better as a result of it. Coming from someone whose first high rocks, I had no idea what to expect. It wasn't really cool, I feel like. Like, I actually hadn't even heard of high rocks when my friend asked me if I wanted to do it last November. And now everyone knows about high rocks. And I did it in February this year. That's sad. I did a high rocks 7 months ago.
And now here you are.
Almost to the date. And here I am now. But I think that that's just a really important consideration too, is like, that's where personalization comes in. And I think you'll feel so much better with more preparation.
Yeah. And looking at performance as the long haul and the long game, like you said, I mean, Patrick Mahomes having off season, on season, doing, various different, like living a different life, and getting to have different enjoyments of life during that time. I think working with a coach, and what I love that we do with our clients is like, we roadmap with our clients, practically a whole year almost sometimes for them, where it's like, hey, I just did this for my client, Jasmine. She isn't training for anything specifically for performance, but she has a lot of physique goals. And so her and I were really sitting down and I was like, here's literally what the next year needs to look like for you. Like, here's everything that we need to be doing. And I think it's so important when that happens. I have a sales call next week with a coach who reached out to me and was like, hey, I really want to train for a marathon. Do you guys do that? And I was like, absolutely. I'm happy to help. I said, like, let's hop on a call. And she's doing her due diligence. She wants to hop on a call and like do this now because she knows she has this goal that she wants to accomplish. But really looking at it as like the big picture, like having a coach who's going to roadmap the off season is the best part. It's the least sexy part, but it's actually the sexiest part. Like, it's really what is the bread and butter of helping you succeed long term, especially if you want to continue to perform after the first event you do.
Yeah, it's very similar to a deficit. If you want to go into a deficit and lose weight, then work with a coach to be in maintenance first. I think everyone just thinks like, oh, I'll only hire a coach for a specific goal. But it's like the prep work actually matters just as much as the goal itself, which is why with our clients, we very, very rarely take on a client and immediately put them into a deficit, because it's like, hey, there's actually just a lot of prep work you need to do for your body in order to even be ready for this deficit. Very same thing as having a performance goal. It's like, hey, like there's so much strength that we can gain. And I think oftentimes people don't consider that, especially when it's a running focus. Even for powerlifting, there's so much, like, we haven't even mentioned powerlifting, but there's like so much form consideration and like just gaining strength in general, not trying to PR every workout, not trying to hit 1 rep maxes, and determine that all the time. It's actually like there's higher volume training that happens as a result. There's other variations. It's not just that you're doing conventional or sumo deadlift and like maybe you're doing pause deadlifts, maybe you're doing pause squats. Like, there's so many other things that happen in order to prep you for the event. I wasn't even thinking about competing in powerlifting and still hired a powerlifting coach because I was like, I want to be able to just feel better in my lifts. And if I end up powerlifting as a result, cool. That didn't happen. But I had the preparation if I needed. And so I love the saying of like, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And
Yeah.
that's like you just having, and it's not to say you need to have a coach all the time also. Like, I don't want to say that. I prefer it because it's nice to not have to worry about it. Like, not having one right now for the first time since really basically 2020 has been really weird for me because now I'm like just kind of doing my own thing, and I'm actually really excited to postpartum like have one again. And pregnancy isn't the reason I don't have one. It was more so I actually just got done with my physical therapist for my knee. But I'm excited for that because I like not having to stress about things myself. And that's the other piece. When you are using a templated program, you have to determine how to make the difference, like the changes needed. And like, that's not your profession. So why worry about it if you don't have to? If you have the means, having a coach can take you so much further.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also going to relate it to bodybuilding. Like you said, you
Mhm.
were like, weight loss maintenance. Like if you want to get into bodybuilding, you don't look at the people online and say, I want to look like them. And then you hire a coach and suddenly you're now being put into a deficit and you're going to suddenly look like that person that you saw on the internet, 3 months from now. Bodybuilding, I give a lot of credit to bodybuilders. It's
Yeah.
hard. It is its own sport because you are very
Yep.
disciplined. You have a very specific training strategy. Everything food wise literally matters down to the milligram that you are
Yep.
having. Like it is so specific. And you hire a bodybuilding coach, a terrible bodybuilding coach is going to put you through like right away into a deficit because they want to give you what you want. A great bodybuilding coach is going to put you through a full prep that is going to get you in the place that you want to be in. A lot of bodybuilding coaches, the good ones that I know, will tell coaches, hey, we're not stepping on stage for a whole year. Like we're going to take a whole year building, getting your body where it needs to be because you have to build muscle. There's all these different classes that you can go into for bodybuilding. A good coach is going to say that. And that could seem really disappointing to someone hiring a coach like, oh, you don't want me to go into a deficit for a year? No, because also as coaches, that is our athlete up there. Like you think that a bodybuilding coach wants to put someone on stage that isn't ready? Like
Yeah.
no, they want to put someone on stage that like they know is a representation of their work and also knows that they deserve to be on that stage because they've done the work to do it along other people that have done that as well. So going that back to performance side of things, it's the same with like high rocks and marathons. Our mailman's here. So Frankie's like, hello.
Hi. Hi. Hi.
Hi.
I'm here. Don't forget about me.
I know. He could never forget about you. He sees you every day and he knows every time. But going back to performance, my charger's unplugged. It's just a whole thing. Guys, couple more weeks after you listen to this. Couple more weeks. And then we'll have our own office. But on the performance side of things, for that and what that can look like is like as coaches, I want my client to be ready. I don't want to get a message from a client as they're running their first half marathon that they just got injured or something came up for them. Obviously, there are things happen to Olympic athletes that train years to be in the Olympics and they can get injured and shit happens. It's just a part of the process of being an athlete. But as a coach, as a good coach, I ethically want to put my client in the best position, which literally means that I want them to be ready for that sport, like be ready for that competition. And to the point when you said to that client, hey, I know you want to do this in September, October, but like your body is literally not in the place to do it. That's a good coach. Like that's a really good coach. And if anything, she's going to perform better in January than she would have now. She's going to have more time to prepare for it and more time under her belt and experience under her belt with the specific training she needs to be doing. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that like it goes into any sport. Oh, Frankie's coming up now. Goes into
Frankie's podcasting.
He's like so amped. It's every time the freaking mailman comes.
The mailman.
The mailman. He's like, hey, this is my friend. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to emphasize is like even relating it to bodybuilding. Like those people don't get on stage because they've been training for 3 months. They get on stage because they've been doing this for years.
Yeah, and I think it's just the FOMO effect for sure. Injuries can happen at any point. Like you said, Olympic athletes, it happens too, right? Like I've had injuries. Doesn't mean I wasn't ready. They just freak things happen. But there's a difference between an overuse injury and a like acute injury that just occurred. So and to the point, like a good coach will be able to tell you no. like now is not the right time. Doesn't mean that clients always listen. But I was appreciative that my client was very open to that, and I was very honest with her. I'm like, hey, sign up for that. So she did sign up for the High Rocks, and I was like, sign up for it. That's fine. Prep for it. You got
Yeah.
tickets for it. It's impossible to get tickets at this point, so get the ticket. She got the refundable ticket. And I was like, if, this landmark or this benchmark does not happen, landmark.
If this
If
landmark does not happen, if you cannot,
if this landmark does not,
if you don't reach the Statue of Liberty, it's fine.
if this benchmark does not occur by 8 weeks out from the prep, from the event, we can't do this because I need at least 2 weeks before we start your prep. And yes, we're going to rush the 6 weeks. She had been doing some stuff prior to what occurred, but it's just not worth it at some point. And like, that's what I honestly had to say. And as me as a coach, like I don't always sugarcoat things. And that's what I said. I was like, it is not worth it to push for this event just to say you did it. Like, I get the FOMO effect. I so understand it. I was going to run I was going to run my half marathon like the day of my second trimester starting. I was so prepared to do it, but my knee said, no. So there's just not always like, it was going to be my big flex of like, hey, I ran a half marathon, 13 weeks pregnant, but like at what risk, right? Like it wasn't the risk for the baby, it was a risk of my knee. Like what happens later on in pregnancy if I do push this and then I have a bum knee and I have to be in bed all the time? Like that doesn't sound fun. And so I think that's just really important. And being in a deficit, going back to that, while you're training for an event, especially being a female, there are so many things to consider hormonally. The big one is cycle loss if you're in a deficit and training for an event. And that's a real thing. That's a real scary thing. And even if you're not someone who's like preparing for pregnancy, because I mean, that's really part of the danger of losing your cycle is like having an irregular cycle. But there's just so many other hormonal things that can come as a result. And as much as it's probably nice to not have a cycle, I, for one, love it. It's kind of nice. But you need one. Like you need to quite literally need one. I mean, screw Eve, but like we need to have cycles. And there's just so many things that come as inflammation, things that if you push now just to try to lose body fat while you're training for something, you're going to also screw your body up for the future. And it can cause just so much more harm than good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just bringing this all back to templated programming. It's all things that just templated stuff doesn't take into account, and that sometimes you're not necessarily smart enough. Like you're smart, but again, going back to the emotion, you're so emotionally tied into that ego that like you're following a plan. You're like, I just got to follow the plan. I just got to follow the plan. I just got to follow the PDF. Like I spend my money on this, like, $50 template, whatever it may be. And you're like, I just got to do that. Whereas like, no prep work has been done. Nothing takes into account of like where you're currently at. And if you feel like you are setting a target time and time and time again using ChatGPT or templated work, whatever it may be, but you feel like you're falling short, maybe the missing gap is getting a professional involved. Like maybe that is the thing. And then to your point too, I like what you said, like at what cost are you doing this? Like you have all the time in the world to do this stuff. So what does it mean to be working with a PDF that's 12 weeks long versus working with a coach for a year? You're probably going to actually get a better result working at it for a year versus working at it for 12 weeks. And that's just what it is. I mean, it's the same with a job. People get better at their job as they get more experience. My first year of coaching, I wasn't as good of a coach or as proficient in what I do now, 7 years in. It's like nice to see that difference and that growth. And the same goes for athletes.
Yep. And to that point too, it's like you buy a program and if you don't end up liking it, it's like, well, now you just spent money on something you aren't even going to do. Yep. So like, and I think about that too for people who do challenges and have to start back over in their journey over and over and over again. And they've been doing the same thing for 3-4 years. It's like, do you know how much money you actually would have saved if you wouldn't have been buying all these different programs and would have just actually committed to a coach for a year and learned all the things you need to know and then utilize that for the future? But yeah, it's such a good point with like a robot that created, I mean, given coaches can actually create programs and sell them, but if they're selling that to you for $50, even $100, they're not responding when you have trouble. Like, you can message them on Instagram. They're just gonna be like, that you bought a program. Like, I'm not here to help. Like, you didn't buy
Yeah.
one-on-one coaching.
It's not their responsibility
Yeah.
to help you get to the finish line at that
Yeah.
point.
There's no correction at that point. Like, you bought a templated program. There's no personalization included in that. Where as a coach, we have real time data that is allowing for us to course correct and figure out what's going to work for you. Putting you into a deload before maybe you need to. I've had to do that with my client that's prepping for the triathlon. And just as we're starting to ramp up distances and throughout the journey, I think we pulled up a deload like 2 weeks just to tame things down a little bit and then ramp back up. Even his taper for the triathlon, it was originally planned for 2 weeks, and we're like, let's do 3 weeks just to be safe. Give your body some more time of rest so that you can really push for that triathlon date, especially because we've actually been in prep for like 6 months, gradually increasing, because he wasn't running, biking, swimming before. So I was like, let's take some extra time. And that's also where a coach comes in too, is the timeline piece of it, because a lot of people are like, oh, you only need 12 weeks to do this. Oh, you only need 16 weeks to do this. But a coach can determine, like, well, are you even ready for this? So we actually prepped before his prep. And that's, again, to the bodybuilding point. There was a time in my life where I did try to do bodybuilding.
You've lived a lot of lives.
I have lived a lot of lives, but I haven't always followed through with a lot of the things. I actually tore my ACL both times. Actually, my ACL my knee really screwed me out of a plan. I tore my ACL in Mexico as I was prepping, and to the point, like, it takes a lot of effort. I took meal prep with me to Mexico, was planning on not having any margaritas, and then lo and behold, I tore my ACL, and I was like, give me the margarita. So, things happen, and that's where a coach can come in handy and kind of help you course correct along the way. Because things are not always going to go to plan, and the investment you can make in a coach is just going to set you up for success so much more than a template will.
Yeah, 100%. I have said what I need to say, and now the ball is in everyone else's
It's up to
court.
you to make the decision.
You get to choose what is best for you.
Yeah.
But also I hope for, the coaches listening, this helps you kind of even get the ability to explain to people when they are coming to you like, oh, I'm going to do this instead of this. Like, it just gives you that ability to zoom out and show them the pros and the cons. I think it's really important as a coach to say, hey, while I personally may not agree with this, or I may not sell this very thing, here's where the benefit could be of you doing that. And then also here's where the benefit of working with me on a personalized level can help as well. Are you open to hopping on a call and like talking through that? Because I think a lot of people just need more knowledge, and it's our due diligence as a coach. Otson said, what is up, people? I think it's a part of our due diligence as a coach to just educate people on all the options, not to necessarily play this bias all the time or to villainize one thing over the other, because that's so what social media does. It's actually just to say, hey, here's all the information you need. Make the best decision for yourself off of that. If you try one way and that doesn't work, cool. There's another route for you too, and vice versa.
Yeah. And just to finish off and flex a little bit on Apex, we are more of a performance-based company. We want to work with people we love working with high-level athletes or people who want to just get into competing in something as an adult when you're like, there's no organized sports as an adult anymore. Like, what do I do? But just to flex on us a little bit, we have a coach who was a college gymnast and did Olympic lifting, competed in Olympic lifting. We have a coach getting into powerlifting. And the cool part for her is that if you are looking at getting into powerlifting, but you feel like you're too small or you haven't been lifting in a barbell, she has experience with that. And so working through powerlifting, we have a physical therapist assistant who can help with the little like aches and pains that come along in conjunction with the physical therapist we work with, but she's also prepped people for various competitions. We have Chris, who has worked with people who do high rocks and also have done marathons, half marathons. She was also getting into powerlifting as well. Like myself, I have my CSCS. I work with a lot of various different athletes, triathlons, half marathons, done it all, high rocks, and a registered dietitian along the way. So like, if you are looking for a company to truly like get you to the point, we don't work with bodybuilders, but we can turn you in the right direction if you are wanting to get into bodybuilding. But we work with all different kinds of athletes and have like a really, really well-rounded team. So if you are looking to prep, whether it's your first competition you're doing, or you're wanting to extend your like competitiveness within a certain sport or competition, like we're going to leave in the show notes, there's a link to apply and just talk with us. Like there's no commitment. It's more so like, let's talk about how we can help you feeling better as you're prepping for whatever event it may be. More than likely, we have someone on our team who can actually help guide you and just have you feeling really good through that journey too.
Hell yeah.
If you're listening, I was just flexing. It's fine.
I was gonna say, anyone that's just listening is gonna be like,
I'm just like grunting.
they're like, wow, she like really goes hard. So do it hard is what you were saying. Is that our last podcast episode? Yeah. Do it hard.
Yeah, I think this is launching before that too, so it's even better. Just stay tuned for next week. Do it hard.
Do it hard.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you guys for listening, though. Genuinely, if you need some guidance, we've got you for all your flexing needs from Kelsey's great demonstration that she's given us this morning. Show notes are all there. We appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.